What's going on, Geek Vibes Nation? This is Larry Freed here for a special edition of Notes on a Score, our feature series in which we speak to the musicians and composers behind some of the most hotly talked about films and television shows that you're probably watching. We're not talking about a movie or TV show today directly, but we're definitely speaking to a composer who you should know very well. You've probably heard his work across a variety of Pixar titles like Ratatouille, Up, The Incredibles. You've seen his work in franchises like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Trek, Mission Impossible. And today we're talking about an incredibly special project, an album he just released with the label Mutant, Exotic Themes for the Silver Screen, Volume 1, a collection of many of his incredible themes from across his career, remixed and redefined in the genre of exotica. You probably have questions. I have questions, and he's here to answer them. Michael Giacchino, welcome to Notes on the Score.
Well, thank you for having me. You're really good at that, man. You just boom, bam, that came out like butter.
I may or may not have practiced extensively because I have to tell you, sir, you to say you've been a dream guest for this show since its inception is an understatement. So it's really a pleasure to get to speak with you as somebody who deeply admires your work. So thanks for being
well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here. What do you want to know? Shoot.
Okay, so this is kind of like an unprecedented project, I feel like. I feel, and that maybe is a dramatic word, but when I heard the news, I was stunned because, I think that a composer reaches a certain echelon where they can release a greatest hits album or sort of like a compilation album. But for a composer to be at a level where they can do so in this way in which they're sort of reviving a genre that I think even most diehard music fans maybe don't even know much about. I think it speaks to a sort of creative freedom that a lot of composers maybe wish or strive to have. Is it exciting for you to be able to do a project like this that feels so deeply tailored to you and your passions as a composer?
Yes. Absolutely. I love this style of music so much. I have since I was a kid, and I still listen to so much of it now between, Arthur Lyman, Martin Denny, all of these guys who are just the kings of that. They were out there telling stories and creating worlds for the listeners, right? And every time I listened to one of those albums, I was just magically transported to some fantasy place that didn't exist in real life, but it could exist in my head. And I always thought, like, if I were ever to get to a place where I could do sort of a greatest hits type of a thing, I would want to do it in that genre. And I just thought it would be fun. And, for me, any project I take on, there has to be an element of fun involved. And that fun can come in many forms. It can come in the form of the people that I'm working with, the subject matter that I'm working on, or the fact that it's a franchise that I loved growing up or something like that. There's all kinds of versions of it. But for this, I really thought the fun could come from doing it in this music, in the style of this music that I grew up listening to and loving so much. Because I felt boring to just stick all of the original recordings onto a LP. And, nowadays you can just make that yourself with iTunes or whatever you want, Spotify, you can just collect it all and make a playlist. Boom, there you have your thing. But to be able to just like wrap it all up and do it in a package like this, and clearly there was no one better than the guys at Mutant to partner with on this, who I love so much, and I just knew that they would understand me. Not a lot of people would understand me wanting to do this. I like to call this the album that no one asked for, So...
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I did sort of think to myself, like, who asked for this?
Yes,
and
no one.
Positive way, but in a positive way.
Yes.
And it's very rare you can say that in a positive light. I feel like more often people are like, who asked for this?
But now we don't want this. Yes.
Now I'm like, I never knew I needed it, and now I'm glad that it's in my life.
Well, that was the hope. I hope that people would just take it for what it was, and it's a fun look back at all the work and projects that I got to work on, and for the films that hopefully a lot of people like. So.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about sort of the collection of themes we have here, because I think sort of conventional wisdom would suggest that if Giacchino is going to make a greatest hits. He's going to put all the big hitters on there. But the great thing about this album is it features a number of your most well-known themes. You have a lot of Pixar, a lot of Lost on there, but you also have some films that I think some people, especially maybe newer fans of your work, maybe forgot that you even worked on. You know, movies
Yeah,
like The Family Stone and Sky High, and so many themes that people were like, did that movie have a theme? Like,
yeah.
you know, but you, when you extract them in this genre, you see that your love of theme has been there, you know, ever since the early days, especially working on video games and stuff. I mean,
Oh
some of the
yeah.
cuts here are really deep, to
Yes,
the
they
point where,
are.
like, Secret Weapons over Normandy, I was like, okay, he's not messing around here. So, like, talk to me about like what went into the curation, because it sounds like you really, it sounds like it goes into more than just sort of like what are the big hitters. There seems to be a bit more of a
Oh
personal
yeah.
aspect
I
to
wanted to
curating.
hit like my hope was I could hit practically everything I did in one way or another. You know, a couple projects have more than one track, you know, lost or something, but to at least give each project its own sort of respect, right? I loved working on Sky High. Mike Mitchell, who directed that, he's an incredible person. We had such fun together working on that. And for me, it's really like a creating a photo album in a way,
Mm.
when you think back or think of it as a yearbook when you leave high school, you know, and it has all the memories from everything. And so in that sense, I didn't want to leave anything out. I didn't want to just say, you could have easily said, well, I don't know, some of these films may or may not have done as well as they should have, but there are still things I worked on. There are still things I'm proud of. And every project I have picked in my career has been because it was something I wanted to do. It wasn't because it was just a job. I have always been super picky. So no matter what I'm working on, it does mean something to me.
What goes into, you know, trimming it down? You know, there's probably so many things you maybe wanted to include but didn't. I'm curious, is there anything musical that you look at in any of these themes that you think maybe put them ahead of the group, that you said, you know what, I really think this needs to be included?
It was really like it came down to sort of main themes. Okay, so let's see a main theme from each project. Now, a main theme from Space Mountain is not really a main theme, it's just the Space Mountain music, right? But for me, it
Right.
was about tracking the main themes. Now, Speed Racer was a little different because Speed Racer, that main theme I did not write. That's the original show theme, it
Right.
belongs to the show. So, but there were tracks on there that I did do. And Casa Cristo was always one of my kids' favorites because my
Oh,
kids are
wow.
obsessed with that movie, obsessed with that movie.
Them
You
and
know?
many others, I
Yes.
must say.
And myself, which I absolutely love that movie, I have to say. And they're much older now. My oldest is 26 now, so they've grown up. But Casa Cristo in particular, that was a track they always made me play in the car when we were driving around, like constantly. We had to have that playing because they loved that moment in the movie. So sometimes it was choices like that that are more like, okay, this one is, I'll choose this because I know that that means something to the kids, or a track like Primordial Forest from the Lost World video game. That was the first track I wrote for that game, the very first thing, and that
Oh.
was the thing that Steven Spielberg, after he had heard it, he had asked to see me. I went and talked to him, and he was just like, I love this track. You have to score the whole game." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I would love to do that, of course." Because he was really involved in the development of those games at the time.
Yeah.
So it was all of these sort of things. So that one was important to be first because I always feel like that one was the one that sort of started it all for me in a big way. It was my first sort of big job. I had had
Mhm.
little things before that, but that was the first. I guess I could have put this paper towel commercial that I did music for years before that, but then that would have been going too far, I think.
You know what? It probably would have sounded great. I think you would have found a way to make it feel like it fits right at home. Because the great thing is, I think that people listening to this album, they may not be familiar with the themes going in, but
Yes.
it won't really matter because they've been reimagined in this way that makes them feel
Yes.
just naturally like this genre.
Yes, exactly. The idea was that you could put this record on without any thought or care of the track that's playing, just enjoy it. And then if you have a question, you can always look at the liner notes. You can always look at the thing and go see what was that one, and be like, oh my God, that was sky high. That's weird. Whatever. Let me in, huh? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I want to also talk about sort of the decision behind the musicality of each track. When, some of them feel very stripped back. Like, a lot of, like, for example, the Normandy track, your Medal of Honor track, they feel the tempo's been brought down. They feel like they've really been kind of broadened. But then you have
Yes.
some other tracks like, I mean, Enterprising Young Man and the rat theme from Ratatouille. They of course can't match the instrumentation of the original
Right.
tracks, but they feel a bit more juiced up than some of the
Yes.
other tracks on the album. So I'm curious, like, what went into the decision making process behind which tracks you felt like still needed that juice, and then which ones you kind of wanted to really pull back and let the Hawaiian feel shine.
Yeah. Well, I think that, it was really like Lost or Medal of Honor or always a little bit more reverent to me and a little bit more emotional. And especially Medal of Honor being with the subject matter that it is, that's not something I ever wanted to take lightly, So
Mm-hmm.
it's not just an action, even though there is action music in there, it's about, people that went through an experience that none of us could ever or hopefully will never understand what it was
Right.
like. So that sort of helps make those decisions. And then something like Star Trek was like, well, enterprising young men, I was like, I don't want to slow this down. I want to just keep it sort of as it was and have fun with that. And that was really a blast to do, And then I would have these conversations with the orchestrator, Curtis, and he would also have ideas or say, it was actually his idea. He goes, what if we put married life in 4/4 instead of 3/4? Because that has a much more of the vibe of the Martin Denny, the Arthur Lyman stuff. I was like, well, let's try it. And wasn't unsure if it was going to work, but it worked great. So it's a combination of factors that went into this.
Quite a few waltzes that you take from the Family Stone. Also, I think you bring it into 4/4, and it works
Yes, yeah.
really, really well, I think.
Yes, yes. And that was another movie I just love. I don't like
Hmm.
that movie. I got to meet Tom Bazooka, the director. I also got to meet my favorite editor, Jeff Ford, on that film.
Nice.
And Marianne Brandon, if you're listening, you're also my favorite editor as well. Um, but so it goes beyond just the music sometimes. It's about the people I
Yeah.
worked with and the experience I had on the project.
Tell me a little bit about the people you worked with on this project. Was it as conventional as, sort of getting musicians for a typical score, or was there? I imagine though there's a part of getting musicians for this project that feels a little specialized.
It was. However, I will say that almost every one of these musicians on here are people that I have worked with on almost every score that I've done. So
Wow,
it's part of like the home team. So when you have someone like George Deering or Marcus Barrow, Mark has played piano on just about every single thing I've ever done from day one, you know. Uh
that's
and
amazing.
and the same with George Deering. I mean, his guitar can be found on just about everything that I've written, which is
So
really
they know
fun.
these tunes. They know these
Oh,
tunes already.
they've played on them all. Yes, they've played on them all.
Wow.
And I also wanted to make sure we had a group of people that could not only play the notes that were there, but improvise then
Mhm.
because there were a lot of times I realized the players that I have that I'm working with, I wanted to open it up and allow them to do a solo, allow them to do, whatever it was we needed to do. And so on the stage when we were recording, there was a lot of improvisation going on. They had the main layout of what we were going to do, but then we would change it up quite a bit and make it feel like, hey, add 8 more bars here, give a solo, or add 16 bars here, you get a solo, and then we're going to do 16 for you over there. It was a constant sort of like, let's just have fun with this and see what we can do. Let's push it until we break it. So hopefully we didn't break it.
Michael, last question here for you. We got to ask because there's still so much left in your library that could get this kind of treatment. This is very intentionally subtitled Volume 1, I notice.
Yes.
Is a
Yes.
Volume 2 on the
I,
horizon?
I think even if I look at, well, if you look at the back, it's
Oh,
so yeah.
okay. When do we know when we can expect the second outing?
Let's see. It says coming soon.
Oh boy, like classic storytelling fashion. Well,
Yes.
I can't wait. If Inside Out isn't on this volume 2, I will riot. I'm just going to warn you right off the bat.
I think
Um,
I think you'll be okay.
Okay, awesome. Michael, it's such a pleasure to get to speak with you from film score fans all over. We are in a debt of gratitude to you. So thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me. It was great talking with you.